Welcome, Barbara. I'm super excited to have you. You're quite the entrepreneur. You've been involved as an entrepreneur for many years now, building Field and Social, expanding into multiple locations, and same as Sundays as well. So, we're going to get into both of those brands, what they're all about. I'd love to learn first about kind of what got you started in your entrepreneurial journey. And I guess that starts with Field and Social, right? So, go for it.
Definitely. I can start there. So an accidental entrepreneur, I would say, although I
Oh,
did minor in business in university. So maybe I was, it's something I deep down wanted to do.
hmm.
I was actually had a completely different career working in the nonprofit sector and working for the UN in New York. And my husband and I lived there for 3 years and ate a lot of salads while we were there. It was the age of, Chopped, Sweet Green, and all these great brands. And really, at any New York deli, you could get a great salad. And every time we would come back to Vancouver, we just didn't have that option. And Vancouver, being such a healthy city, really saw an opportunity for like a handcrafted, beautiful salad shop. So decided to partner with my husband and two other business partners to start Field and Social. And that was really my first dive into entrepreneurship.
Okay, cool. So you say accidental because like you didn't necessarily intend on being an entrepreneur. I think that happens with a lot of us too, though. It's like you're interested in something, you're curious about something, and then you kind of just dive in and go for it. So we know that you probably had this interest in like health and wanting to provide these good foods for people that are accessible. But what was that like starting your first business? Like what was your first step? Because I'm curious to know. I'm sure when you started your second business, you were like, all right, we're going to change things up, maybe do things a little differently. What did that look like first time around?
Yeah, it was I think starting with the business plan, which was very, very rough. Like it was by no means, a fully fleshed, but really starting to pull together sort of like what could this look like? Some mood boards and some specifics around where we might want to be. What will this space look like? And that just sort of got our creative juices flowing, I think. And it was enough to start some conversations with the other two. So it was my husband and I and our family, and then the two other potential business partners. And so having something, even though it wasn't a beautiful sort of pitch presentation, it led to some early conversations and interest from them, which then I think reiterated that this may be a feasible idea.
Okay, so you just kind of like went for it and it sounds like you didn't worry about the perfection part because a lot of people can get stuck in perfecting the idea. So it was more like, hey, we have this concept, we think it's going to work, let's try and then modify as we go to make it better. And then if you want to expand, you'll expand on what you did, right? Does that sound correct?
Definitely. I think it was that, and also realizing what our strengths and weaknesses were and where
Mm,
we needed support. So, restaurant experience is something I didn't have. In university, my job was, I felt like there was sort of the people that worked in retail or the people that were in hospitality, and I always
mm,
worked in retail. So I never even worked in a coffee shop, but we initially partnered with a friend from high school who had restaurant experience. They previously run a restaurant in another city. And so initially they were going to run the restaurant part. And for me, this was
okay.
going to be sort of like the creative outlet. But sometimes, it's a windy path. He ended up moving away from Vancouver, and I then jumped in to sort of take over operations about 6 months into the business. And that was when the real learning curve happened,
Yeah, no
because I
kidding.
never intended to sort of like be day-to-day operator, really, running everything from the team to helping our chef with menu development to branding and working with, contractors on marketing and all of that kind of stuff. So it was just a really great experience to run
Mm.
a small business in that one location shop.
How soon after did you start expanding?
Um, about 9 to 12 months after we initially
I feel like that's
opened.
early.
Yeah.
Was it just were you killing it? Is that why you were like, man, we got to do more of this?
Actually, no. The
No.
first 6 months were very humbling.
Okay.
We didn't realize that, like, what were the key metrics that we had to look at. In hospitality, it's really around your labor and your food
Mm,
cost. And so had a lot of learning to do there, that our labor percentage was too high, that our food costs were out of control. And very early, we had to actually bring in an outside contractor just to like really help us understand that. But about 6 or 7 months in, started to see a bit of light, like, okay, the numbers, kind of the unit economics started to make sense. And it would
Mm-hmm.
probably take us a while to find a space. And it did. It took another 12 to 18 months.
Okay.
And so we started to look. Yeah,
Sounds good. Cool. Yeah, because that must be overwhelming already. It's like one thing to throw yourself into entrepreneurship, another to learn all the things required to run your specific business. Like it's not just like you're selling products. Like I think the restaurant industry is actually, or hospitality in general, is quite complicated. And there are a lot of layers and a lot of people that need to be involved, right?
totally. And we were
So,
dealing with, it's all fresh food. So, like, we get a
mm,
fresh food delivery every single day. You want to minimize waste.
right.
And it was a lot of learning about how to do that, and how to order effectively and how to build our menu. And the other thing I didn't mention, around this time, I also had we had our first son. And
Mm,
so he was 5 months old when I jumped in. And so I was also, I think, dealing with like a bit of an identity crisis of like, oh,
yeah.
I thought I might take a 1 year mat leave, and here I am diving, headfirst into running this business. But I'm
Hey, there are no
so
rules.
grateful. Totally,
Yeah.
totally. And I mean, it was the best training ground, and it's where I met, a lot of entrepreneur friends, and yeah.
Yeah, really cool. That's actually pretty insane to have a kid so young. I think for me, I don't have kids yet, but that was a big, or it still is a big thing, I guess, like the fear of like what's going to happen with my business. I mean, you basically were launching a business while being pregnant, I guess, right?
Yes,
And then
that's
you
right.
had your first kid and had to deal with everything that comes with being an entrepreneur for the first year, which is wild. But I mean, now you're probably used to it. You've been doing this for many years. You also decided to launch another company. These are two completely different businesses. So, can you talk to me or talk to us about Sundays, what that's all about, and what really kind of drove you to start this second company?
Definitely. And, I think it's interesting, like the kid thing, I think, can actually propel your business or your career forward. With the second
Interesting.
location of Field and Social, we had our second kid, and then Sundays launched just a year later. We had twins, so it's sort of like
What?
kids seem to come with these
Oh,
businesses. But I
that
think,
is insane. You're
yeah,
birthing more than a child. You're
it
birthing
was,
businesses and children all at
yeah,
once. You have like 17 children at this point.
right, yeah, it's been a really crazy few years. But also it's all good. And as you said earlier, there are no rules, and you can kind of
Mm,
do things in your own way. So to your question about what made us start Sundays, really saw an opportunity in the furniture space for, a high quality brand that made furniture shopping less overwhelming. It can be really overwhelming, and it's such a big
yeah.
purchase. You're spending 5 grand on a couch. It's not something you do every year. And so wanted to design a really thoughtfully curated collection. So, not everything to everyone. Started with a few living room pieces, really, a few sofas and some coffee tables, and then eventually expanded into bedroom and dining. And again, we launched that business with some partners, and the three of them, I have to say, have many years of previous furniture experience in different
Mm,
areas. I was the only non furniture founder. There's four of us. Yeah, and so we were able to leverage that experience, and I think what we'd learned at Field and Social in terms of building a brand and building community, as we launched Sundays.
yeah. And I remember reading on your website, you guys would meet up on Sundays,
True
right?
story. True story. We all had other full-time jobs. Yeah.
What a fun like way to hint back on that. I really love that. I know that you guys emphasize a lot the ideas of culture and community. So how did you make sure that that was at the forefront of your branding for both businesses? But more specifically with Sundays, because I think when someone thinks about community, it's a lot easier to envision a community in a physical space where people are coming to eat and socialize. But Sundays being a furniture company, where does that community come into play?
Yeah, great question. So we started as just e-commerce with a website.
Mm.
And so that community really started to be built, through our social media and, conversations with our customers. But as a result of the pandemic, we actually got lucky and were able to open a couple of pop-up spaces, which have now
Oh,
turned into
cool.
more permanent showrooms. And it's really leveraging those physical spaces as well that's allowed us to build community. So we've done this in a number of ways. From collaborating with local artists in each of our showrooms. So we have some great BC based artists in our Vancouver showroom. Seattle has some great, ceramic artists from the Pacific Northwest, from Portland and Seattle, and the same thing in Toronto. And then really being in conversation with our customers, like what do they
Mm.
want to see? We have the power to, design new products or amend, expand on our current collections. And so that's been, I think, really a big part of Sundays is having those conversations with customers. To really sort of affect, I think, the trajectory of our product design.
I feel like with furniture space, especially, it's hard because people want to try, right? And you guys launched just e-commerce. That must have presented some challenges, no? How did that work for
Many,
you
I would
guys?
say
Yeah.
many. Yeah, I think the
Yeah.
biggest one being we were quite naive. The three, Mo, Sarah, and Noah, all had 20 plus years of furniture experience. I felt like I developed some experience, sort of like brand and community and maybe
Hmm.
building culture. But none of us had digital marketing experience, e-commerce experience. In fact, we didn't hire our first e-com hire 18 months into the business. We didn't even know like that was a thing, that we needed an
Right.
e-com manager. And so that's, I think, had we not been that naive, I don't even know if we would have started the business. I think that naiveness sometimes really helps you when you're
Right.
starting. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Um, it was a lot of learning, and we tried to make it seamless even online, like through being able to offer swatches and a generous return policy. Working with delivery partners that help our customers, take away the packaging and assembly. But you're right, having a physical space does really help, especially in our
Hmm.
key markets where people can come and check out the product in real life.
Yeah, because I see that you guys have some showrooms in a few of the major cities. I've actually been to it when I was shopping for a couch a few years back. We moved into our house.
Oh,
We
that's
had gone,
great.
yeah, we had gone to a bunch of stores, and we remember seeing and like really loving the design of your couches.
Thank
Um,
you.
and being in the physical space, like that was a deal breaker for us. We were like, as much as we can see how gorgeous they are online, like even for Crate and Barrel, for instance, like some of them they
Yes.
don't have available in their showroom. And even
Yes,
though we
some
thought
are
the couch
online
was
only,
amazing,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
and even though we would love it, we're like, well, we're not going to buy it if we can't test it out.
Yeah.
Especially when you're spending, like you said, over $5,000 on something that's meant to last in your house long term. It's not like you can try it and have like a 30-day return policy. Like it costs a lot of money to ship these things. Like I recognize that obviously for the business aspect as
Yes,
well.
totally.
So when did that shift happen from being like online digital until you were like, well, you know what, we need to start having some showrooms? And did that really affect your sales when you did?
Yeah, it was a bit of a moment of serendipity, to be honest. So when the world shut down, we just prior to it shutting down, it was about 4 months into Sundays. We had signed a lease to open a fourth Field and Social, and we're very nervous to open a fourth
Mm,
restaurant, not knowing because the other three had closed temporarily. And so we had this space. Truly, it was an empty shell, like nothing beautiful. We were about to do this, restaurant build out. And so that was Sunday's first pop up.
great. Where was
Was
that?
It was in Yaletown in Vancouver.
Okay.
And just, some concrete floors and brick walls, and we made it work. And then eventually we moved into another space closer to more like the furniture area here in Vancouver. And to answer your question about how did it affect sales, yes, for sure, it helped. I think we noticed that a lot of the customers that would come into the showrooms were warm contacts. They'd heard about us through social or through digital ads.
Nice.
And they were ready to buy, but they wanted to be able to try the piece first. And then we also saw impact in our e-commerce sales, because I think it gives customers trust. This is a real brand, they have
Yeah.
showrooms, even if I'm not in the city,
Hmm.
um, that they're, that they have a physical space. And I think for some people that can give a lot of comfort.
Yeah, definitely. It must have been challenging kind of managing and building this company. Like how did you manage the quality of the product? I'm assuming most of it's being produced overseas or manufactured
Yeah.
overseas, right? Because I'm just thinking, it's not like a little thing where they can ship you a sample and you could test to make sure that it works. So like these being such large scale products, what does that process look like?
It's a great question. So we do samples. So the lead time is very long. So from,
Okay.
doing a design to product ending up in our warehouse ready to sell might be like 12 to 18 months.
Okay. But wait, when you
Because
say sample, is it like they send you a couch?
yes,
Oh shit. Like a whole couch. That's wild.
yes. Yeah, and so then you're also working with suppliers to make sure that they can get on a container because it's a single item. And so how do you
Yeah.
package it with other items? So there's definitely a whole world of logistics, which is quite complex, I think, in the furniture space. And then the other way we sort of mitigate that risk is starting really small. So we might start, for example, our field dining collection, started in one size and one finish. When we started to see traction, then we expanded it into multiple sizes and multiple finishes.
Mm.
Because of the minimum quantities, you definitely don't want to overcommit if it's an item that won't resonate with customers. So those are some of the ways that we mitigate that.
Yeah, for sure. And does the cost of the actual product itself wholesale change if you're committing to multiple sizes per line? Like, are you able to reduce the cost because you're ordering more, even though it's a different size, it is the same style? How do the manufacturers work around that?
Yeah, so it's based on the materials,
The
and
materials.
the
Okay.
materials have their own MOQs because the factory is also sourcing those materials, and they have minimum quantities from the partners
Okay.
that they work with. Um, yeah, so you don't always get that economy of scale when it's a different material.
Got it. Okay, it goes by material. It's so interesting.
Hmm.
Like I'm just so curious to know like what happens behind the scenes because it's something I'm really unfamiliar with. I do have some friends and other entrepreneurs that I've spoken to that are in like the CPG space, but like typically the products are a lot smaller, easier
Yes.
to ship, easier to get samples. So like with furniture being so big, it's cool to see that it is pretty much done in the same way. It's just that the investment is probably much bigger, I would imagine, because when you're getting these samples, it's not a $20
Yes.
sample.
Yes. And I should say, we also, it's not myself, but it's our co-founders, Noah and Mo, that also visit our factory partners.
Okay,
And you're
cool.
right, we source globally. We have factory partners in Europe and then also in Asia. And so that's the other place where you can then see samples and make
Yeah.
adjustments in real life. And of course, there's a whole quality component as well. So we have, on the ground, um, QA partners that help us with that piece on the ground.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, because you never know, with the QA stuff. Have you ever run into some like major hiccups where you had to, either like trash or send a shipment back kind of thing?
Not necessarily send a shipment back, but improvements in packaging that we've noticed,
Mm.
or in assembly. Like for example, we had a bed collection where it was actually our delivery partners that were saying, with this small tweak, this would be so much easier to assemble. And so then we were able to go back to our factory partner and make that change
Cool.
for the next run. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great that you have so many people involved that are willing to also put in that input because it's easy to sit back and just be like, "All right, we're going to do it like you said and how we should do it." But when someone proposes a better way, it's like, "Sure, why not? Let's implement that too." And I'm sure your
Yes.
customers too, you have some kind of say and
Absolutely.
influence.
Whether it's from what they're saying to us when we meet with them in real life or on social or through product reviews. Um, we get an email every single day from our retail team. What are the conversations that are happening in each of the stores? What were some of the questions? What were the reactions to some of the new pieces that are on the floor? Like, we're very attuned with customers are saying, and it really helps that we have a co-founder that's so closely involved in that full process.
Yeah, really cool. I want to know, so you have these two brands and you've been building them for years. They're very successful. What would be something that you can share with someone who's maybe just starting out that maybe you wish you heard at the beginning in building the brand specifically that could be supportive to them, where you were like, shit, like I probably shouldn't have done it that way, or like you should maybe try and do it this way because, I messed up the first time around.
I think for me, I mean, there's so many lessons, but I
Yeah.
think for me, one of the biggest ones, and maybe one that I took away from Field that applied to Sundays, was just to delegate earlier and really, you always sort of hear this phrase of like work on the business instead of just in the business. I think
Yeah.
working in the business is really important because getting down into the details, you get to learn
You're
a lot of that.
involved. Yeah.
You're involved and it's helpful as the business scales. But, when I stepped into Field, I was so keen to hang on to being the manager and running our social media and doing all these things. And I wasn't great at most of them, What I was really good at and what I really enjoyed was like building out the vision of the next store. Where did we want to go as a brand? And it left me with very little time to do that when I was, on the floor every
Doing
single
everything
day.
else. Yeah.
Yeah. And it wasn't until we had our second kid that I had to hire a manager. We were opening another location. I was like, oh, should have done
necessity.
this
Yeah.
totally much sooner. I mean, she was so much better at it than me. She'd done this before, and I learned a lot. So that's something I would recommend.
It's amazing to kind of like put your ego aside sometimes too, because as like an entrepreneur, it's your baby. You want to be involved in everything. And I do think it is important to dip your toes and have a good understanding of what everybody is doing.
Yes.
But like you said, had you done it sooner, number one, you learned from this person, right?
Exactly.
Just because you're hiring them doesn't mean that you can't also learn from them. And that's like the way that I run my business is every single person on the team at Nomad Creative, like I tell them when they're getting hired, I'm here to learn from you also. Like we have our way of doing things, which is great. But just because we've been doing things a certain way doesn't mean that this is how we should be doing them forever. Because I also recognize that other people have had experience in other companies, other organizations, their own freelance experience, whatever it may be. Or even just like a thought of, hey, wouldn't this be cool? Like, why don't we try this? And so I always, that's my approach from the beginning is like, come to me with any ideas, suggestions, because I want to make sure that they're able to do their best job, right? I'm not here to necessarily just tell them what to do exactly.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. And that's how I feel about the team at both Sundays and Field. I'm learning so much from them every single day. And it's the best part of the job.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're also working with your husband, your partner,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
And some friends. Like that's got to be challenging. What are some strategies or techniques that you guys have put into play to make sure that you don't kill each other when you come home at the end of the day?
It's something I'm really proud of. Like, Noah is one of our best friends from high school.
Nice.
Mo and his sister Sarah, who also work in the business.
Oh wait, it's his sister.
So I work with my sister-in-law.
So it's very, very family.
Very, very family. And I think, I am proud of us. And I think what makes it work is very early on, before we maybe even had a name, we sort of sat down about what are some of the core values for the business, what are areas that we can each bring strength in. And I think we're really lucky we've got complementary skill sets, So if it's product, it's Noah. If it's people, culture, operations, Sarah. Logistics and sourcing and finance, it's Mo. And if it's more on the brand and marketing side, it's myself. And then, of course, we sort of like collaborate together on many of the decisions, but we respect each other's lanes. And that really helps.
Yeah, I think having those like clear roles is good because then you're not necessarily stepping on each other's toes. But has it happened?
Have we stepped on each other's toes?
Nothing abnormal, probably.
Nothing abnormal, but I think we tend to over communicate rather than under communicate. Like how are you feeling about this? Like, can I just gut check this with you? Like that's a conversation we have a lot. I mean, one downside is, it's a pro and a con. Mo and I, it's work and life sort of bleed into each other. And for the most part, I think that's great. Some of our best ideas for Sundays come when we're on vacation because, when you're in a different state of mind. But it's hard to fully separate when it's,
Yeah, I
yeah.
was gonna ask, like, it must really bleed into your like everyday life, but at the same time, like, if you do have that good balance and you are still able to kind of disconnect and whatnot, or you know what, even if your work just like brings you so much joy that you don't necessarily feel the need to, then why not, right?
Yeah, I was just telling Mo yesterday, I mean, like, work just gives me so much energy. Like it's a part of my life that literally yesterday, as we were picking up the kids from daycare, just having one of those moments, like I love what I do.
Oh,
So yeah, it's nice. And that's not every day for sure, right? Like there's
yeah.
there's been many tears and having twins a year into the business was really
I still
hard. That
can't
was
believe that.
kid number 3 and 4 in the middle of the pandemic. Like the whole thing was just um yeah, that was really hard. And I sort of knew like, okay, let me just put one foot in front of the other. And eventually this will mean that, I'll have some flexibility
Hmm.
and so yeah.
When we spoke a couple of weeks ago, you had mentioned dealing with some imposter syndrome. This is something that's very common, with people who are starting businesses, not necessarily feeling like maybe they're worthy or they really know what they're doing. Is this something that you're still dealing with, or do you feel like you've really got a hold of it now? And what did that process of feeling through those emotions look like for you?
I think for me it tends to come in waves.
Hmm.
And it's always come from a place of, oh, like I don't know hospitality, and I'm running a salad shop. I'm not a
Right.
chef.
Yeah.
Or, I have 3 co-founders that all have all this furniture experience. What do I know about this industry? Do I have anything of value to add? Like, especially in those early months and years, that was definitely a thought rummaging through my head a lot. But what I've noticed, it's often creeps up when I'm just feeling sort of depleted and low energy, and
Mm.
maybe other areas of my life are just really busy. Maybe something's going on the family side, or on the health side. And so I'm just trying to be more aware where that feeling's coming from, but it comes and goes for sure.
Yeah, I would agree with you too, because I think so Nomad Creative, we launched it in 2018, so it's been about 6 years now. And when I first launched the agency, I had never worked in an agency.
Oh, that's
So,
amazing. Yeah, I love that.
so I
Yeah.
kind of just like did what I thought was right and felt right, but I had transitioned from freelancing. So, since 2011 I had been freelancing. I had a lot of experience there. I did work for other brands in house, but like there was something about the two worlds on their own that I didn't love. I was like, I'm missing the community portion
Hmm.
with freelancers, and then working for brands, the 9 to 5 thing like killed me. I couldn't do it, so and but I liked the idea of like managing my schedule and clients and freelancing. So I was like, cool, how can I like combine the two? And then when I launched Nomad Creative, it being a remote agency, my entire team is freelance based. So I'm giving freelancers who, like I once was, the work, right? Because that's sometimes toughest to find the work, but
That's
also the
right.
flexibility to make their own schedules, work on the projects that they want and all of that. But, anyways, I don't know why I went on a rant. The point of me explaining this is that when I first started, it was like, okay, I started off as like a freelancer. Then I started this agency without having actual agency experience. And then I took it upon myself that even when I was first building my agency, to consult within another agency, because I was like, I feel like I'm
Yes,
lacking something.
that
So
really
let me
helps,
gain,
doesn't it?
yeah, it really, really helped. So let me gain that agency experience. And I came back with so much knowledge. And even now, it's like I'm 6 years in. I was like, how cool would it be if I did this? Or how cool would it be if I did that?
Yes,
It's like, just because I'm doing this business doesn't mean I can't also like branch out and continue to learn. And as your clients or your business continues to grow and change, so do your challenges. And I think that's where the imposter syndrome comes in. It's like, okay, like we finally figured it out. And then the next client is a little bit bigger, the scope is a little bit larger. And then it's like, oh my God, another thing happened and it's another lesson. And it's literally, entrepreneurship is just a bunch of lessons, one after
yes,
the other.
yes, yeah,
And you keep getting a little smarter and a little sharper and
yeah.
a
And a
little
one
better.
step forward and 2 steps back. Yeah,
Yes, exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Oh my God. And how many, like you said, a bit of some tears here and there.
Oh yeah,
Like,
and tears are good. Walking
let it
helps. I think
out. Yeah.
entrepreneur friends have really helped.
Hmm.
And I've been very open about the imposter syndrome that has come in waves for me, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a big reason why I started this podcast too was to connect with other entrepreneurs like you, because it is tough when you're running like this agency on your own. Obviously, I have my team, but other entrepreneurs, it's hard to find and connect to. There's the Chamber of Commerce in the areas that I live where you're able to meet other people too. But like I've been loving meeting people like you doing this podcast who just have so many different types of businesses too. I think that that perspective is really cool, and to also
Yeah.
just learn from other people's experiences, like free knowledge. Hello.
Yeah, exactly. I'll never forget. I was having a really rough day at Field once. We were shorted chicken or something on the order. Like everything was, things were going wrong. And one of my sort of early entrepreneur friends, Barbie Bend, who is the founder of Jaybird and Legree and BC, came in for lunch. She's like, "How are you doing?" And I just ran. I'm like, "Come talk to me for a second." We ran around the corner near the bathrooms and I just broke in tears.
Oh,
Just like
yeah.
somebody asked, because I was trying to like hold it all together for the
Right.
team and I couldn't hold it together in front of my friend. But I remember that so vividly. And she, said like, eventually you need to get out of this day to day. And eventually I did. But yeah, I'll never
Yeah.
forget that.
That's cool. It's so amazing to have a support system, whether it is other entrepreneurs or people in your, if you're just starting out and you don't know other entrepreneurs, maybe join, a chamber of commerce or Facebook groups. Like there are so many different communities out there.
Yes. And I would really encourage people to cultivate those relationships. Barbie's someone, just picking on her as an example. We're both busy. We don't, see each other on a weekly or even on a monthly basis, but a couple times a year, I think we're doing a walk actually in a couple of weeks. One of us will reach out and we'll reconnect and how's it going? And we'll share lessons. And, it's been 8 years since that initial cry in the hallway of Field and Social, and we've stayed in touch. So I think, put work into those relationships is
For
what I would
sure.
say
And
too.
they can be very low maintenance too, like you
Yes,
said, even a couple of
100%.
times a year, like you can get so much value from that. And I think that if anything, us entrepreneurs understand that like it's cool to have that type of relationship. You don't need to be in touch 24/7.
Yes.
You can support each other in that way and still be in each other's worlds on social and whatnot and cheer each other on. I think that's super important.
Yeah,
Really cool.
that's something I really try and do as well. Like if I see someone, maybe I haven't seen them in a long time, but maybe they've launched a new product or they've done a cool campaign. Just it takes, 30 seconds to send a quick email or a text message. It can mean a lot.
Yeah, it could go a long way. I love that.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, Barbara, before we wrap things up, we always end with what I like to call the mindful minute, where you share one piece of advice from either your life, your business, something that people can't necessarily learn in a textbook that you feel would benefit anyone listening to this podcast.
For me, it's probably, and maybe because I'm so fresh in this sort of like 4 young kids and running multiple businesses, but I think I had this idea that I could never grow a family at the same time as I was growing businesses, like that would be impossible.
Yeah.
And it's not that I set out to do that. It sort of just happened. And now looking back, I wish I knew that like, that's possible. It's totally possible. You can make your own rules. There'll be some bumps in the road, but actually like for me, growing a family it's actually propelled both businesses forward. And maybe, maybe that's luck, maybe that's by chance. But I think it is because I had to, give up sort of holding on to every single facet of the business and trusting others and delegating. And now I feel like starting to come out of it on the other side.
That's so beautiful. And I think that's going to resonate with a lot of people too, including myself. I think I'm finally getting over that hump and the idea that I always had to wait until I was in the right perfect place.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of fears involved, especially being like a first-time mom and a first-time parent. You don't really know what to expect. And I think for me in particular, could be very similar for others. My fear was that like I was selfish to not want my entire identity to become mom.
Oh yes, there's that too. Yeah.
I would love to have a family. I want to have kids, but like my fear was like, well, am I going to stop doing the things that I love? Am I still going to be able to grow my business? Am I going to have time? Like, I don't want to be
Totally.
I don't want to feel selfish and having to care for myself and my company, but it's like, could you do it all? And the more conversations that I have with people who have a similar kind of experience as you, the more I realize like it is possible and it
Yeah.
is inspiring. So thank you for sharing that, because I'm sure it will stick with a lot of people listening.
You're welcome. Yeah. And it's definitely, you know, there's moments where it's, you know, you're dropping balls and some part of your
Mm-hmm.
life definitely doesn't feel balanced. But I
It's
think
life.
once you
Yeah.
accept that, that's life. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Definitely. Sounds good. Barbara, where can everybody go to learn more about you, about Field and Social, about Sundays? You have a million Instagram and social media handles to share.
So Sundays is Sundays Furniture, Field is Field and Social, and the best place to connect with me is probably LinkedIn, B Samieian.
Amazing. Sounds great. So we'll link everything in the show notes, guys, if you're interested, or if you need a couch or some furniture. Go hit
Thank
up
you so
Sundays
much.
or Field and Social for a salad. It was great chatting, Barbara. And for everyone listening, I hope there were some great takeaways for you, and we'll chat next week. Bye.
Thank you so much.